she was gonna keep. Oh yeah, alright, take it easy baby, make it last all night. She was an American girl.
This is Deborahcratic, a podcast where we sit down with everyday Americans and hear their extraordinary stories. I'm your host, Deborah Drucker. Come along with me as we discuss those things that we were always told not to talk about. Politics, religion, and more. I promise you'll be inspired and have your mind opened by the end of this episode.
Well, it was kind of cold that night. She stood alone on the balcony. Yeah, she could hear the cars roll by out on 441, like waves crashing on the beach.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Deborahcratic. Today on Deborahcratic, we are going to hang out with George Esquivel. George is the creative director of his namesake footwear and accessory brand, Esquivel. He is an acclaimed and influential designer and was a finalist in Vogue magazine's Council of Fashion Designers of America competition, also known as the CFDA Vogue Fashion Fund. George is a father, a husband, and is involved with his community. He loves to mountain bike and meditates every morning to get his thoughts together before the craziness happens. Let's find out how George's life led him to be the talented and creative man he is today. Hey, George, how you doing?
Good. How are you doing, Deborah?
I'm doing really well today. I'm so happy that we finally got to get you to come on to the show.
Yeah, it's been a while in the making. We've been texting back and forth about this.
Well, you're a busy man.
I'm happy to do it.
So let's get to it. I know you live in Orange County now, but where are you originally from?
I'm from Orange County. I was actually born at UCI Medical Center, when it was Hospital of Orange or something, but I grew up mostly in Orange County.
And who did you grow up with in Orange County?
I'm the eldest of five. So it's my mom and dad, and I'm the eldest of five siblings.
And what's the makeup of the siblings? Like boys, girls?
There's 4 boys and a sister right in the middle.
Nice. And were you guys all very close?
We were. I mean, it was kind of a crazy upbringing. So I think we were forced to be close because we were always moving. But at the same time, it was just everybody's trying to find their own identity. And it was just kind of chaotic growing up. We're all very close now. My mom has 15 grandchildren from the 5 of us, wow, which is really amazing. But yeah, there was times, I mean, you're all trying to figure out like what it is you want to do, and everybody wants to do their thing. But yeah, we're all super, super close.
Well, I understand it's a very interesting upbringing you had. So I'd like to know, what was that home life like? Was it a happy upbringing?
No, my upbringing was not very happy at all. It was very chaotic. My father was a criminal, a drug dealer. When I was 7, he came home shot and he wanted my mom to patch him up. When I was 9, he wanted to do a father-son outing and took me to steal my first bike. So it's just, did you grow up here in Southern California?
I did.
So do you remember Pep Boys used to have bicycles?
Yes.
And there was a Pep Boys near my grandmother's house. And one day he said, hey, we should go get you a bike. I'm like, okay, great. Then I guess we're not going to Pep Boys when we drove past Pep Boys. And there was, true story, this is the weirdest thing. So my dad is Salvador George, but he went by George. I'm George Jr. And the other guy in the car with my dad is a George. So there's 3 Georges in the car. And the 2 Georges in the front seat are getting high. And they're talking about where they're going to get my bike. And I'm freaking out. And, you know, I'm a little kid, 9 years old. And I think everybody knows we're going to go steal a bike and the police are going to pull us over. We finally get to the spot. And my dad tells the guy, go get that one. That's it. And it was like the coolest bicycle in the world, which was an Evel Knievel bike.
Oh,
so not only did he steal a bike, he stole like the coolest bike for me. But the weird thing was I was very embarrassed to ride it because I knew how my dad got it, right? And my cousins would make fun of me because they knew how I got it. They knew I couldn't afford that. Like my cousins who grew up with money, They didn't even have the Evel Knievel bike. I had the Evel Knievel version. And it was really weird knowing it's not yours and knowing that you didn't earn it. It just felt very, very, very strange. And I rode it for a while, but he would always, that was the MO of my dad. He would just take whatever he wanted.
Wow.
So that was when I was 9. And I went to 12 different schools growing up. I think one of my brothers went to 14 or 15 schools, second to the youngest. We would start a school and we'd move into the apartment at the beginning of the school year. And then halfway through the school year, he'd either get thrown in jail or decided he didn't want to pay the rent anymore. So then we would move into a motel. And I don't know if you've seen any of the documentaries or like the Motel Kids.
Oh, I know a lot about that.
I was a motel kid up until the age I was about 14 years old.
Wow.
You know, so 7 of us living in these rundown places. And, you know, we later realized he loved it. My father was a very smart man, spoke multiple languages, could do anything, could fix cars, you know, but he just loved the criminal life and he loved to get high and he loved to do drugs and he just, you know, kind of lazy. We used to call him the king of the dipshits, you know, because there's a lot of dipshits that live in those places and they would all kind of come to him and just get his advice and stuff. And then he gets free drugs. So why would you ever leave? You know, never mind how much suffering your wife and kids are going through and, you know, living in these roach infested motels. And that was up until I was 14. And it was all around Orange County, Anaheim, Buena Park, Fullerton, Santa Ana. I started school in LA and then we left LA and then I came to Orange County with my family. You know, he had the good notion. He's like, well, I guess I'm going to put you in better schools. Never mind that he's still dealing drugs and causing all this trouble. But crazy. I mean, so at 14, he had me start collecting the money for the drugs, which was really crazy. There was always guns in the house, super violent. My dad's resolution to everything was just to fight with people like my younger brother and I. I mean, he thought it was a sport. He thought it was fun just to watch my brother and I fight other kids and cockfight us. And it wasn't that we liked it. I think we were more scared of my dad I didn't like to fight. I mean, what person likes to fight?
Yeah.
I wanted to be normal, right? Not that. And he just was crazy. So at 19, I kicked him out of the house.
Before we go there, I want to go back to those formative years because I want to get to know how you got through it all. Like, how did you maintain your personal moral compass?
You know, I attribute all that to my mom. My mom would always say to us, have faith in God and work hard and it's going to work out okay, right? And I'd have that devil and angel on my shoulders of, do I follow my dad and take anything I want? Or do I be like my mom and just be patient and work through things? And, you know, she was right. She modeled humility. She modeled love. It was my mom who just kind of kept that peace and calm. Even though it was chaotic, even though it was crazy, she was the one, don't touch it. It's not yours. You need to earn it. You got to work for it. All that stuff where my dad would just steal everything.
Did your mom try to flee him?
We did. And he would just show up.
Oh, he would keep coming back.
The crazy thing is, I remember him and I got in a big fight and the cops came. And back then you didn't have to press charges. Now it's mandatory for domestic abuse or domestic violence. It's mandatory that charges are pressed, right? And I don't know, it was just out of fear for him or you're beaten down. Where do you go? There's places now you can go. There was nowhere to go in the 70s and 80s.
Yeah,
restraining orders were a joke. We had he would threaten to kill my mom and I had restraining orders against them. And my mom would call me when I'm at work. She's all, your dad's right outside. He won't leave. So then I would call the cops and they're like, is he there? And I'm like, yeah. And we'll be there in 20 minutes. Like, what do you mean in 20 minutes? He's threatening to kill my mom.
I mean, yeah.
But that's just, it's the system, you know, and I'm not saying that cops are bad or anything like that. It's the system. And it's really, really hard because the guys, these criminals, they know what the system is. They know how everything works, right? That's what my dad was. He always wanted to scam the system. And that's kind of what he went through his life with.
How did you deal with all that stress as a kid?
You know, it was very stressful. I was always angry, like most kids, right? You're bitter. I mean, dealing with life in general without having those stresses is hard enough. But very interesting that we were surrounded by love by my mom, and we played sports. There were some coaches that loved on us. We had some good friends. You know, it's amazing people when we were living in the motels that would show up with bags of food. You know, there was love, right? And I think the love of my mom, there's no way we would have been able to survive if my mom would have been in the same lifestyle as my dad. I mean, I would have ended up like him for sure.
Well, let's talk about those formative years a little bit more. I'm trying to get to how you have so much drive and you went down the right path instead of the wrong path. And I want to know what informs that. So when you're growing up, it's not really a happy upbringing. It's a stressful upbringing.
It's miserable.
It's miserable. And I'm so sorry, but you are who you are today now.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And in that household, was it a political household?
No, the people like that don't have, it's everything's on a whim.
Okay.
And whatever they want.
Yeah. And how many generations American are you from your dad's side?
On my dad's side, I'm second.
And what about mom?
I'm on my mom first.
So growing up, it wasn't a thing for them. It wasn't a privilege to be able to vote. I'm kind of gathering.
Well, I mean, I think it's more than anything, you're trying to survive.
Right. And so there was religion in the home.
There's always faith. Yes. My mom, I mean, and I think that's where my strong foundation of faith and all my siblings are. It was God that got us through everything. And I have no problem telling anybody that. It's like the craziness. I mean, I used to have nightmares of the beatings and blood. My dad would just come home bloody. We'd be on the street. My dad would be having fistfights with other people. And can you imagine, like, you're like 8 years old, 7 years old, and you just see your dad getting in a fist fight.
I cannot.
And I'm also like the oldest, and I'm corralling the other four, and everybody's crying and screaming. And you're just seeing this all the time. So it's just a sense of violence.
So being the eldest, you probably took on that fatherly role.
Well, it was forced on me. Right. My dad was kind of a prick in making me do it. Like, he would say, you need to look out for your siblings, which was really unfair. The guy was just being lazy. He didn't want to do his job. So he made me do it.
Put you in charge. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I remember when he got out of jail after they killed somebody. And I said, hey, you're out now. You can take care of him now. Like, it's your deal. He's like, nope, it's still your job. And that's when I realized, like, you know what? This isn't going to work. And we've been fighting. And I think he realized, like, it was his time to go.
And so he was in jail for murdering someone. Was that the one time he murdered someone?
That was that we know of.
That you know of.
He didn't even serve that long. I mean, it's kind of crazy.
And how old were you?
He went in I think it was my freshman year, and he got out right before my senior year. So almost 3 years.
Wow. Is he still with you?
No, he passed like 10 years ago. We got a call Christmas Eve, I think 10 years ago, that they just found him dead in a motel room.
He never got his shit together.
No, he never got his shit. I would see him on the street because he was a veteran, but he was also involved in a bad drug deal where he had a steel plate in his head. So he would have his monthly check sent to his sister's house. He'd go pick it up, take the money, and then he would just travel. He'd go to Mexico for a while. He didn't look homeless, but if you talked to him, he was just off all the years of drugs, which is, it's such a bummer that we're not telling kids not to do drugs. You know what I mean? So many people's lives have been affected. And that's a big thing for me is, like, there's nothing wrong with telling kids, don't do it, you could die. Or don't do it, you may not come back from this. You know what I mean? I think that scared us straight. Seeing him on drugs scared us all straight.
So that was my next question, was how did everybody else in the fam turn out growing up under this duress? I
mean, I would say we're all like walking miracles, but we all have our issues.
Right.
We all have our quirks and whatever it is. We definitely all needed therapy.
Well, never
which we
a bad
didn't
idea.
Get. I didn't know how to go to therapy, and I remember when I was 30, I really said, all right, God, if you're real, you need to take all this away from me, because I was not a happy guy. I was not, even though I had my beautiful wife and I had kids, it's hard to see the beauty when you're still living with all of these nightmares and emotions and frustrations of, like, you're just angry. Like, you look at my early pictures, and I still don't smile a lot in pictures, but my early pictures, I was just like, man, I was really unhappy. I was not
How could you not be?
Dad. I was not a good dad in the early years. I was not the way I am now. And I learned from a jerk, how to be a dad.
How did you transform that?
I asked God to start switching my heart and change my heart and take it all away. And it's been a work in progress over the past 23 years. Over time, it's like, wow, how I can't deny it. Like, I can't deny that there is a God when I see my family.
That's so beautiful.
The 15 grandkids my mom has, she's got an insane legacy. Forget about what I do. The grandkids, like, there's going to be, I think, a total of 7 bachelor's degrees in the next couple of years.
Bravo.
Like 3 masters. There's going to be a police officer, a firefighter. There's going to be a therapist. I mean, it's just wild. It is really, really amazing. And like, that's from my mom and instilling God in us and all of us praying over our kids and staying close, right?
Well, your mom sounds amazing. Did she ever remarry or move on in life?
Never remarried. And it was kind of sad because she didn't gain her independence until he died. And the reason for that is she would go places and run into him. It was almost like he knew where she was living. So she was always scared. But once he died, so now she's 77, that was 10 years. So she was 67 coming into her own, which is really weird, right?
Very late start.
It's a late start,
But what a relief it must have been. I hate to say that, but
I'm sure it was. It was a relief for all of us. I'm like, well, he's gone now. No more issues.
More pain.
So
yeah,
no more. Like, even though he was an old man, he was just still causing drama. Like I'd get a call from one of his sisters, or, hey, your dad needs your help. I'm like, you know what? You guys can help him. Like, we're done. I got people that actually want to be helped.
So I got down that religion helps you through, which is a wonderful thing when used properly, in my opinion.
Well, I think it's faith. It's not really religion. It's faith.
And does faith influence how, say, you look at the greater world, or like politics, or, we're Deborahcratic, so we do talk about politics.
I would say the greater world, not really politics, because I think it's all BS, to be honest with you. And I've known politicians, and I've met people on city councils, and I've met mayors, and I also have my own business. So I know how business gets done, and it's one of those things where there's always deals being cut, and it doesn't matter left or right. And I think we need to treat people with love and respect. If we lead with love and respect, things can get worked out. I mean, yes, we should all vote. We should all vote. I vote. My family votes. We all have our duty to do that. And it's a right, and it's also a privilege to vote where so many people don't. But I also understand what the system's like. Like, I know my dad was corrupt, and I know who he was getting high with. And I know that there was people they shouldn't have been getting high with my dad who got high with my dad. Right. Like people that you should trust in life, right? Yeah. And that's when...
Isn't that disappointing, huh?
Well, but that's when I realized that life is not perfect and people aren't perfect. And it doesn't matter what position you hold. They're people, right?
Right.
And it's shocking, Deborah, the people that my dad would get high with and do crimes with. And that's when I realized, like, the system it's flawed because it's human. We're all flawed.
So if you go out to vote, what do you do then nowadays? Vote for the lesser of the two evils?
That's kind of it.
Yeah, right?
The lesser of the two evils of what I feel is evil. I think who's treating people with love and respect. Yeah. And a lot of these things people don't want to fix them, and you know that. They don't want to fix it. It's just, what can we do to get our votes now? And then they change. Every politician's the same.
Totally.
I don't really like to talk politics, and I get heated, and I would rather focus on the positive of what we can do in life. Like, how do we help our fellow man? And I had a discussion with a store owner a couple of years ago, and she was very upset with whatever president. And I made a point, and I said, I'm curious, has your business only thrived based on the president? And she said, no, why? I said, that's my point. The business is based on you. Now, you may get to keep a little bit more. You may have to give away a little bit more at times, right? But has your business been growing for 20-something years? Yeah, it's been growing. And I said, over those 20-something years, there's been Democrat and Republican presidents. Yes. I said, that's my point. It's up to us, right? It is up to us. It's up to us to feed our fellow man. We should be helping our neighbors. We are the ones that are growing our business. My business is not hurting because of whatever president, and my business is not doing great because of whatever president. Maybe for the massive corporations where there's tax breaks, yes. Right. But then at the end of the day, what happens to those tax breaks? People don't get them. The owners keep them. So it doesn't matter who you vote for. It's a system, and these people everybody's trying to get theirs, which is what everybody does. And I get it. And I'm not mad about it. It's just life.
Well, I want to talk about you and your career. And I do want to go back real quickly to the fact that you are involved in your community. And early on, I read something really cool. We Got Your Back, I think it was called, where that's the most beautiful. George, thank you for doing that for whatever time you did it. That is one of the most beautiful things I've heard about, where you put backpacks together for these kids, on a Friday so that they can have a backpack of food for their family to get through the weekend. That must have been so rewarding. Tell me just a little about that.
So what this system does, and they're actually having a hard time right now, some legal issues where they went from feeding 1,200 kids. I think there's only 30 on the program now. I don't know what happened. We're trying to figure that out right now. So We've Got Your Back is a program under Giving Children Hope based here in Orange County. They have a couple programs. One of them is on Fridays, the moms can come in and shop for food for free. So basically fresh food, fresh vegetables, bread, and it's done in a very dignified way. And every Friday, every one of these children, they would get a backpack with 22 pounds of food based on their living conditions. So let's just say they didn't have a refrigerator. They would have non-perishable items, and that backpack fed 4 to 5 people from Friday through Tuesday, which is amazing.
That's incredible.
And then I've been working with Harvesters Orange County for a couple years now. Just anything I can do to help feed people, because I know how, I like going to school because we got the free food. There was times when there was no food in our home because my dad would come home, literally he'd come home high, and because he got the munchies, he'd eat all our food. And now we have no food to eat. And it's just this is crazy. And that's why I support these organizations. I work with them. I still work with them both.
Beautiful. And I see that out of high school, you were a truck driver and you were going to concerts at night. But when did you open your eyes and say, I'm not going to be anything like my dad, and I'm going to make sure that there's food in my fridge? And where's that turning point?
I don't know if I said I'm not going to be anything like my dad. It was one foot in front of the other type of thing. So when I'm 19, now I'm like the surrogate dad, right? To my siblings. My friends are off in college playing football, doing their thing. And I'm like, I got to be like a dad. And this kind of sucks. So my escape was going to concerts with my girlfriend. And the 90s was kind of Orange County time, where the punk, rockabilly, ska, all that was happening. And I would say it probably started happening like 94, 95, 96, somewhere in there. I had my first pair of shoes made in 94 in Mexico. Shelly and I used to go to Baja, Ensenada, Rosarito, TJ.
And Shelly is your wife today that you got together with in high school.
She's my high school sweetheart. Yeah, so she's my wife
Beautiful.
And life partner. And so we would go down there and play adult, for the day. And on one of these trips, at some point, I saw a sign that said bootmaker. So I designed this first pair of shoes. And I had already been doing clothing. I'd been doing some workwear. I was reworking the workwear shirts before the shoes. And the Reverend Horton Heat was wearing them. The guys from No Doubt were wearing them. But the clothing thing, it didn't hit me. And I think the shoes hit me because I always had the fakes. I always had the fake Nikes, fake Reeboks. Yeah. Had the
counterfeits or
the counterfeits.
Yeah.
So, and there's nothing worse than someone calling you out on your fakes in junior high. I'm like, oh my gosh. So I think that's why I gravitated towards footwear. So I get this pair made, and now I'm wearing them to the shows, and everybody's like, wow, those are super cool. What are they? I'm like, they're mine. And they're like, really? And can I get a pair? So I used to drive a truck for a chain of linen stores, and I used to be their maintenance guy. I would fix things if they broke, and I would also move merchandise from one store to the other. And I started noticing shoe repair shops along my route from San Diego to Bakersfield. I'm like, well, if they can fix them, they must know someone that can make them. And I would stop at every single shoe repair until I finally found a man, great guy, outside of LA in the City of Commerce. And we ended up making 2,500 pairs of shoes in about 2.5 years out of his garage.
So when you say making them, you're designing them and he's putting them together.
At first, he was doing that. And then the garage was a disaster. He was really far behind. He was a retired shoemaker. And he was doing this at night. My wife almost left me at one point because what was happening is we had now 3 kids living in a 2-bedroom apartment. And I'd go to concerts. I still loved it. And what I would do is I'd bring the musicians back to our little apartment, not to get high, not to do drugs, not to drink, but to sell them shoes.
That's great.
And she's like, George, you cannot show up with these people anymore. It's 2:00 in the morning. But that's kind of what we did. She's like, and I had everything out of my garage. And I just kind of fell in love with it. It was positive affirmation in a good way. And I was discovering that you could make money designing and building something.
And what a good feeling to see these guys get on stage wearing, or these women, or these stars that you admired, that you would go listen to. And they're getting up there and it's like, those are my shoes.
Oh, and now they're having me stand on stage with them just because I make their freaking shoes, which is like the craziest thing. Like the wildest thing. I remember first time I got to stand on stage in a big way was X opened up for Pearl Jam and they played at the Forum. And nice venue. Yeah. So I don't know if I did them for who in X wore the shoes. And then some of the guys at Pearl Jam wore the shoes. I just got to stand on stage. I was like, this is kind of amazing.
Wow.
Like really cool. And then over the years, just the people I've gotten to meet and been able to work with, the musicians, it's a lot of fun. It wasn't like I said, I'm going to set a business and I'm going to make so many shoes. I'm going to make money. It wasn't, it just, I loved it. And I let the passion and love for it kind of guide me. I've always said, and Shelly and I have always agreed, if God keeps opening doors, we're just going to keep walking through.
Great. Keep on walking through them, George. You're doing a great job. And I wanted to go back to your career is just really cool. You did the travel accessories for the Beverly Hills Hotel. That's so cool. Only my favorite hotel on the planet.
I love that hotel. The woman who was running it, the concept was, I want to have beautiful independent brands in the hotel that you can't get anywhere else. And that was the concept. And that's what drew me to it. And I loved it. And we've done clutches, we've done sneakers, we've done our famous slide, we've done the coated canvas toe like the Goyard and Neverfull Louis Vuitton, we've done wallets, we did a 3-way candle collaboration. It's like 6 or 7 years. It's been a lot of fun. So what comes first then? In 2001 or before, let's call it 2001, you really established the business in this iteration. And then do you get the Beverly Hills thing after you are a nominee for the CFDA? Like, tell me the process. So I think that the catalyst for the explosion of my brand and kind of like how it really evolved, I had been doing pre-CFDA, I had a couple of retail stores. I mean, I still worked with amazing stores. Fred Siegel Feet, Stanley Silver, the owner of Fred Siegel Feet, was one of my first luxury mentors. I mean, he ripped me a new one, I don't know how many times, but it was all in love. And he literally, because I didn't grow up in luxury, I was the poor kid on food stamps. I didn't understand retail. I didn't even understand what a collection looks like. I didn't understand branding. I didn't understand big international business. But in 2008, Lisa Love, who was the West Coast bureau chief of Vogue, sent me an email.
So Vogue magazine reaches out to you. Vogue magazine, only the most definitive fashion periodical.
Deborah, but it's kind of been my life. How can I not believe in God? These angels are like taking care of me. And so I get this email and she's an amazing woman. Lisa Love, amazing. So should we start talking? She said, so where you been? I said, I don't know. What do you mean? I've been here. This is what I do. She goes, how come I haven't really heard of you? I said, I don't know. Now we have been getting press up until that time, but it was never like large scale press, right? It wasn't GQ, Esquire. It was local press. And people would always write about who I'm making shoes for. That was a big thing. The musicians of who I'm making shoes for, TV shows. I used to do shoes for Friends or Drew Carey. All of these people, that's what created the press. So Lisa says to me, I love your collection. You should apply for the CFDA Book Fashion Fund. And I kind of knew what it was. I said, I don't know if that's really me, Lisa. I'm not really a fashion guy. She goes, are you kidding me? I'm like, well, I don't know. I'm just doing shoes. And I had men's and women's. And she said, you need to apply. So I apply. And I'm like, why am I doing this? I'm not going to win. This is not who I am. Deborah, we had a good business. It wasn't great, but it was a good business. And I love my life. I used to go to the founders of Google. I would fly up and meet with them. I used to go to Nicolas Cage's house and fit him for shoes. So it was a pretty cool job already. And it paid well.
Right.
So I apply. It goes for that. I think that year was $350. They notify you, then $250, then $150. When they told me I was in the final 50, I'm like,
and there's also
wild.
a monetary reward if you win, right? There's like $100,000.
Out of 10, the top 3 get money.
Okay.
And they also get immediate mentors. The other 7, you've now become part of the CFDA Vogue Fashion Fund family. So I find out I'm one of the top 10 finalists. They have this dinner. I don't win. I'm bummed, but the accessories editor says to me, George, Anna really likes what you're doing. You just need some guidance. I'm like, okay, but I'm still upset. I didn't win. I'm still very, you want to win.
When we talk about Anna, just for the listeners, we're talking about Anna Wintour, who is the editor-in-chief
of Vogue.
magazine.
I think she's also creative director of all Condé Nast publications. She is the baddest of the mamma jammas there is. I'm telling you. So I don't win, but then I have a meeting with Anna Wintour, and it's just like in the Double Wash product where she's talking and there's people taking notes. And I remember them telling me, only ask what you want to know. Like, do not go in. This is not become friends with her. Like, I get it. Right. So I kind of asked for 2 questions. I said, I want to know how to have an international brand, understand branding, and I want to understand international business. And she says, you need to go back to school. I was like, well, how am I going to do that? I'm married. She goes, no, silly. Don't worry about it. So we talk, niceties, the whole thing. I walk out of her office and my BlackBerry's already blowing up. Fashion director of Net-a-Porter. We were told that we need to meet with you. Anna just sent us a text, blah, blah, blah. And it's just kind of snowballing from there.
Wow. So she becomes a mentor.
Yes, a true mentor. And what people don't realize, if you think of the brands that have been through the Fashion Fund, Alexander Wang won before me. Rag & Bone, who got to, I think, 300 million in sales at one point, maybe even more. All of these brands, the amount of people that they employ, the revenue that they bring in, it's largely in part because of her support and guidance. And it's not just her, right? It's the Vogue. There's a lot of really amazing people in that stratosphere of Anna Wintour, the top of the top in fashion and business people. So you get to talk with those people. So I don't win, but then I get an email from the accessories editor. Fratelli Rossetti is looking for a creative to help him come back into the United States. Would you be interested? I'm like, well, yes, of course.
The Italian footwear company, Fratelli Rossetti.
Yes. And they said, they want you to do a presentation. So I reply, and I said, Felipe, I don't know how to do a presentation. What does that mean? So she's like, don't worry, we'll help you. So they helped me put the presentation together. Diego Rossetti, he's in town, New York for Fashion Week. And he's like, I really love what you're doing. Would you be interested in working with us? I'm like, sure. So then I'm flying to Milan every 6 to 8 weeks for 2 years.
Wow. So you're flying out to Italy and your family's staying back home and you're doing what, 2 seasons a year for them?
Yes, 2 seasons a year for them. Here's the crazy thing. So Anna Wintour actually came to my presentation in Milan for Fratelli Rossetti twice, which is crazy. Yeah. Like Anna Wintour doesn't show up, but she showed up. It was the wildest thing. So then Anna Wintour starts this thing called Americans in Paris to expose designers to the European market and to the stores and to press. And I picked up all this retail business and it just started going from there. And Tommy Hilfiger then becomes a sponsor of Americans in Paris. And he says, George, I think we should do something. I said, what would you like to do? I'm game, whatever you want. So I think we should make like a limited number of shoes and we're going to do something really cool. So we made 1,000 pairs of shoes. We got crazy exposure over the worldwide. And I asked Tommy, I said, why do you want to do this? He goes, I'd love to give you some international exposure. And he says, I want to do something really cool that I don't do within my brand. We literally handmade these shoes here in my shop. And then I get an email from Ricky DeSole, who was now the accessories editor. And Ricky DeSole, her dad is Domenico Del Sole, who's Tom Ford's business partner.
Who was my father's business associate for years.
Oh, wow. That's crazy. Yeah. Small world. So Ricky says, hey, we received an email from Tommy and Anna Wintour and I both think you should really consider this. I'm like, well, what is it? She says, Tommy is looking for a creative director. I'm like, well, yes, let's do it. So I ended up becoming creative director for Tommy. I was there all of 13, all of 14, and then part of 15. It was just an amazing experience. And then when I left there, I decided to really focus on the brand and start building it. And then, like a lot of the world, we've all been kicked in the gut a little bit. It hasn't been fun.
How is your online business? Is that something that's lucrative for you? A good space?
all of our business is up and down since the pandemic. We can have amazing months and we can have months of crickets. Pre-pandemic, our online business was actually a lot better because there wasn't so much noise. And there's been a lot of noise from the bigger brands, right? Everybody's buying for attention. Everybody's buying for the consumer. And we're still in that phase of like, wow, this is just, you're trying to write it out. I have friends that have amazing, really big businesses, and they said it's never been harder to make less money than it is today.
So everything's a really crowded market space.
Super crowded and moving really fast.
Right.
Like really, really fast.
And I am looking at the clock here, and you have given us so much of your time, your valuable time, and so much of your beautiful story. I want to ask you a few questions that are a little bit more kind of in line with my Deborahcratic ethos and outline. And one of them is, do you feel that politics has affected the way your kids are growing up? Has it affected the way you do business?
I think the politicians, not politics, are the ones that are affecting everybody. I think they're breeding a lot of anger, frustration amongst people. You have, in my opinion, a politician is someone who says, okay, I'm going to work with both, right? Try to figure it out. Now they're being punished for working with the other side. And the left does something crazy, so then the right does something crazy, and then the left does something crazier, and then the right does something crazier. And it's like, seriously? Like, that's not what it's about. Like, we're not going to end up anywhere good if we just keep fighting. I've had so much fighting in my life, I don't want to fight.
How do your kids, these young adults, how do they navigate that atmosphere out there? Where do they get their information? Like, are they voters?
Oh yeah, for sure they're voters. They're voters, but I hope that it's the same thing. You lead with love.
Yeah.
I mean, they're all in service. My eldest is a teacher. She works in a very tough junior high where there's a lot of gangs and troubles with kids. My son wants to be a paramedic and the youngest wants to be a nurse. So they're leading with love. And I think that's the main thing always. Lead with love. And as you and I said, love can conquer a lot of things, right? I don't think it can conquer all, but I think it can conquer a lot of things.
Most things, yeah. I hope that love can bring us back together. I also wanted to ask you, does anything make you hopeful for the future of this great country?
I'm hopeful every day. I hope that people change. I hope that people realize that fighting isn't getting us anywhere for the betterment of our country, right? I hope that, and this is for the left and the right, it's not just about towing the party line. There's nothing wrong with saying, you know what, I was wrong, or I looked at it differently, or it's a different point of view. Again, me growing up the way I did and me now having a business and dealing with the people, there's different points of view. And I think I'm kind of lucky that I get to see both points. It's not just one or the other.
Right.
And I've had conversations with both people who are still in the same situation that I was to point some things out. And the same thing for the flip side, people who've never been poor, who've never needed or wanted anything, to point out, like, let me just kind of show you or explain to you what they're probably feeling. And if you've never been in that situation, how can you be empathetic towards that? That's all.
And how do you feel about, just human dignity and people's rights? Where do you stand on like a woman's bodily autonomy or the right to choose whether she...
The thing is, as a Christian, there is, and people want to make it black or white. It's not black or white. If my daughter came to me and she said, Dad, this happened, well, I'm going to love you. I'm not going to say like, absolutely not. But I also don't think that you can just use it as birth control.
No.
That's not right either, right?
No.
So again, right, we want to make everything black or white. It's not black or white.
Right.
It's not black or white. We should not, the things that are happening in these other states where these little girls that are molested or insane, like, that's crazy. What is wrong with you? Like, that's just not right. But I am pro-life. But at the same time, it would be my daughter's decision. And if something happened to her or whatever reason, but I don't think it should be used. And I know personally because my wife and I sat in the Planned Parenthood parking lot for our second. And I don't care what anybody says, it turns out to be a human. My son is a living, breathing human, and we need to take those things more into consideration. Like, this is, whether you believe it's a human at what point or whatever, it's going to be a human, right? It's going to be a human. my son is a human. He's 26 years old. He's beautiful. I love him. And we should not, on either side, we shouldn't take things so lightly. We should be more conscious and more open and more respectful to what people are going through. And again, I think the respect is kind of gone at this point. Not gone, but people just don't care. It's like, I have to be totally right on both sides.
Yeah. I just can't imagine that it's an easy choice for anyone to make.
I don't think it is, but I also think, it's not easy.
So, George, we thank you so much for sharing your story with us today.
It's my pleasure.
I really appreciate and honor your time.
Thanks for having me, Deborah. It was a blast.
This episode of Deborahcratic was hosted by me, Deborah Drucker. It was produced by Lee Rocker with co-production and editing by Gideon Brower. Our amazing music was performed by Amy Nelson and Kathy Guthrie of Folk Uke. Be sure to rate and review this episode wherever you listen to podcasts. For more Deborahcratic, check out Deborahcratic.com and our Instagram at Deborahcratic. That's DEBORAH Cratic, like democratic. Until next time.
Political